Well, hi, everyone. I'm Bryn O'Donnell. I'm a senior program manager over at the Filecoin Foundation, and I wear a few hats over here, one of which is leading our OKR work. And I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about something that we all care about, metrics. Dashboards, KPIs, data streams, we love them, we rely on them, and they're essential to making good decisions. But when you are working in a decentralized ecosystem like Filecoins with contributors across projects and organizations and time zones, the challenge isn't whether metrics exist, it's whether we're aligned on what the most important metrics are. And so in other words, how do we know together that we're making meaningful progress towards our shared goals? In centralized organizations, metrics are often top-down. Someone sets the goals and defines the KPIs, and then alignment follows. But in a decentralized ecosystem, we each have our own context, our own priorities, sometimes our own dashboards, and so we need shared metrics, not because we want uniformity, but because shared understanding is how decentralized systems stay cohesive. And so metrics can become the language that we use to coordinate, to evaluate, and to learn. And so what makes a metric right or meaningful? The right metrics are specific. That means they're detailed, they're descriptive, they're not vague, they're measurable, they're trackable, or we have proxies for them that are trackable. They're outcome focused. They track real world impact and not just tasks that move us forward. They're relevant. They actually tie directly to what we're trying to achieve. They're timely. We can not only access them, but also update them often enough to make decisions and adapt from them. And finally, they're shared. They're visible and meaningful across teams or collaborators and not siloed. And so a good metric really tells us, are we doing the right things? Are they working? Should we adjust? And so at the Filecoin Foundation, the tool that we use to align around metrics is objectives and key results, or OKRs. And so OKRs are a very simple goal-setting framework that helps us to focus and align efforts around measurable goals. They help teams prioritize, communicate, and self-organize. And so an objective, or the O, is what you want to achieve. It's a clear, inspiring goal. And a key result, or the KRs, are how you measure progress towards that goal, or what needs to happen to let you know that the goal is met. And so one of the folks who popularized OKRs sums it up in this simple formula towards the bottom that says, I will objective as measured by key results. So for example, if our objective is, and this is just hypothetical, to improve Filecoin network reliability, one of the key results that we're using to measure that objective could be something like, reduce average data retrieval time by 20%, or, achieve 99% successful storage deal completion rate. So the objective tells us where to go, and the key results tell us how we'll know if we're getting there. When hardworking teams are heads down on work, it's easy to lose sight of where we're trying to go. And so the question becomes, how do we align, not by control, but by clarity? And how do we ensure that progress is directional? And so that's really where shared metrics and goal frameworks come in. And they're not metrics for the sake of reporting, but they're metrics as infrastructure for coordination and for trust and for communication. And so that's why we use OKRs. And I'm going to break down the 4 qualities that make OKRs such a powerful tool, especially in decentralized systems. And that is focus, alignment, transparency, and adaptability. So firstly, focus. OKRs help to create clarity. They force us to name the big picture, our objective, and then define exactly how we plan to measure progress towards it, which is our key results. And that process forces focus. We can't prioritize everything, and so we have to identify what's most important and measurable. Instead of saying, we launched X, we say, did the launch of X move the needle in these ways that we hoped? And so it's a shift from checking boxes to driving outcomes. And that kind of clarity is foundational in especially decentralized remote ecosystems. The second thing is alignment. One of the hardest things about decentralized work is all staying aligned while moving so independently, and OKRs make that possible. Because when goals are clear and visible and structured, teams can execute autonomously without drifting apart. You just need shared visibility into what matters and how progress is tracked. And so through OKRs, I can see how other teams across the Filecoin Foundation are planning on working towards a goal. And so that way I can coordinate or adjust to avoid duplication. And that's how we can work in parallel. Finally, transparency. OKRs turn individual goals into shared contexts. At the Filecoin Foundation, we not only set our OKRs for the foundation as a whole, but we also have teams set their own OKRs on how they ladder up to achieve those organization-wide goals. And we share those OKRs and progress towards them with others across the foundation. And so when we do that, we're not just tracking progress, we're making progress legible to others. And so that level of openness can build trust. I don't have to ask teams what they're working on or whether it's working. I can see it. And so that makes it easier to offer support, to spot synergies, and to celebrate wins. And it also turns metrics into more than just data. Again, it turns them into infrastructure for collaboration. And then finally, adaptability. OKRs are a framework that are structured enough to guide us, but flexible enough to grow with us. So they give us a rhythm, a cadence of setting goals and checking in and reflecting. And when the landscape changes, OKRs change with it. If a key result isn't tracking the right thing, we shift it. And that's not failure, that's feedback. And that kind of adaptability is really crucial in fast-moving, decentralized environments. And so how do OKRs work in practice? They are cyclical. So we can set them in quarterly cycles or annual cycles. At the start of a cycle, you set your OKRs. And so both organizations and teams identify what their 3 to 5 top objectives and have each of those have 3 to 5 key results each, following that formula of I will objective as measured by key results. And so by keeping that number small, only 3 to 5 objectives with only 3 to 5 key results each, OKRs force us to choose what's most important and not get lost in a long wish list. I also have done a little asterisk above the transparently here because when OKRs are visible to the extent that makes sense for your organization and accessible to relevant collaborators, we can build a better understanding of the responsibilities of teams and individuals and really support one another, because this is what it is about at the end of the day, is really supporting one another. It's also about reflection. So we make sure to review our progress and reflect at a regular cadence. The foundation does this quarterly, and we use something called the stoplight diagram to indicate if things are complete, which would be green, if they are on track, which is yellow, or if they are at risk, which is red. We also encourage teams to have these quarterly opportunities for reflection, to share insights and use past experiences to inform better future decisions. And then finally, share findings and ask for support. OKRs are a framework for conversation about how to improve the ways in which we work towards our goals together. And so it's about also asking other teammates or supporting organizations for help with at-risk or those red key results. And so everyone can know where to focus and we can use resources to maximize our impact. And so here is a real-world example from one of the Filecoin Foundation's fiscal year 2025 OKRs. As so many folks have mentioned across all of these presentations, making Filecoin work seamlessly and finding product market fit is a top priority, and it was one of the Filecoin Foundation's objectives for 2025. And so we've identified a few key results, such as, increasing network storage utilization, having a certain percentage of on-chain deals or actually sectors, renewed before expiration, as well as a handful of others. And so you can see here that these key results aren't tasks, they're outcomes. And so by focusing on these outcomes, we can help align product and tech teams and communications and events teams and the community around a shared definition of success. And so you can read more about some of the OKRs we've published at the blog that I've linked here at the bottom of the slide. And so we really want to focus on measuring what matters. And if we are clear on what success looks like, and we help to track it together, we can move fast without spinning apart. And so whether you use OKRs, dashboards, Notion docs, or other dashboards, ask yourself and your collaborators, what are we trying to achieve? And how will we know if we're getting there? And if we keep asking that and keep answering it in writing and sharing, we're on the right path. I know that there are so many metrics conversations happening across the ecosystem. We have tools like David's numbers dashboard work. We have folks like Starboard. We have the Network KPI Initiative and so many more. And so I think it's important that we stay aligned, not just on the numbers that matter, but also the why behind them, and put that into writing, because having shared understanding starts with shared language. And so, as MPG mentioned, in person at FDS, I'm going to be hosting workshops for teams. So bring your ideas or your draft OKRs, and we can work on this together following the same formula that the foundation uses, or we can modify it to make it work for you in your custom scenario. Alternatively, if you want to just meet up and chat about shared metrics across the ecosystem and aligning on what data is most important, I'd love to chat about that at FDS as well. Thanks, everyone.